we'll start this workshop lying down on the mat. So once you've got any props you need, just make your way into lying down position on your mat. So what we're going to do today is fairly experiential. I'll touch into some aspects of anatomy, but mostly I'll be sharing practices with you and guiding you into the experiential, into feeling yourself from the inside. So if you lie either with your legs straight, if that's comfortable, or with your legs bent, soles of your feet on the floor, knees pointing up towards the ceiling. And then rest your hands on your front hip bones. First, connect to a sense of your breath reaching the front of your pelvis. Perhaps you can feel your lower belly rising and falling. Just resting one or both hands on the front of your pelvis. Tuning into how that area feels today. Noticing sensation. My preferred way to access a sense of my body internally is to start with physical sensation. So mapping what physical sensation you feel around the front of your pelvis. Does that area feel relaxed or tight? Is there any aching or pain? Where is that? Do you feel like your breath is connecting all the way down to the front of your pelvis? Or is it just kind of near there? The front of your pelvis is the joint. There's the two halves of your pelvis joined together at the front, and there's a joint called the pubic symphysis. And that's a pretty stable joint. It's sort of is cartilaginous. It's held together pretty tightly. It doesn't move or slide around much, but there will be a subtle movement potentially as you breathe. Just noticing if you have a sense of that subtle widening of the front of your pelvis as you breathe in. And a subtle narrowing as you breathe out. Then I want you to bring your awareness to the back of your pelvis. Just maybe wriggle your hips on the floor a little bit. So you feel the bones at the back of your pelvis, a sense of like how you can kind of tilt and rotate and move them a little bit. Just have a bit of a wriggle. It's probably slightly easier with your knees bent, but you could also do this with the legs straight, whatever feels comfortable to you. And now this is an advanced yoga thing. Can you connect your breath or even just your awareness to the back of your pelvis? The structure at the pelvis is a little bit more complex. You've got two halves of the hip bones, and then in between the two halves of the hip bones, you have your sacrum, and at the bottom of the sacrum, you've got your coccyx or tailbone. Some people think of the sacrum as being like a diamond or a triangle. And the edges of that diamond or triangle are joined onto the two halves of the pelvis. And the joints between your sacrum and the ilia, you've got one ilium on either side, are really interesting because if you look in a lot of medical textbooks, it says, oh, these are fused joints. They don't really move very much. But they do move when you're younger. And actually, it's one of those things, if you practice a lot of yoga, then typically you do retain movement in these joints between the sacrum and the ilia. And that's an interesting thing because sometimes a bit of movement is good and sometimes a bit of movement is too much movement. So for instance, for me, I have one side of my sacrum which is pretty stuck and the other side which moves. And very occasionally when I lift something that's too heavy, or I used to do it when I opened doors, I would sometimes, parts of my sacrum would move against my ilium and be slightly out of alignment. So now connecting your breath with the back of your pelvis and the mysteries of whatever you have going on, both in the connection between your sacrum and the two sides of the pelvis, and also connecting to your coccyx. Connecting your breath with the back of your pelvis, particularly if you're in advanced yoga, you may be able to feel as you connect your breath to the back of your pelvis, there's a widening as you breathe in and then a gathering in as you breathe out. So you're actually creating very subtle movement in your sacrum. If that whole idea of sending your breath all the way down to your sacrum is like, oh, that's a bit complicated, I want you to just focus on breathing deeply and just feeling as much as you can there, whether you have a sense of your breath reaching there or not. Noticing physical sensation around the back of your pelvis. And you can also connect to the sense of your tailbone. So you may kind of be really aware of, okay, I know where my tailbone is. If you're not, you can always slide your hand underneath the back of your hips just to feel, where is it? It's just above your rectum. And the tailbone sort of sits on the base of the sacrum. There's a little bit of a joint between the sacrum and the tailbone. Connecting your awareness with your tailbone, with your coccyx. Perhaps connecting your breath with that area. And your tailbone is also connected in the back of your pelvic floor. So you may find that as you connect to your tailbone, you can become more aware of the back of your pelvic floor. And then have a sense of your pelvic floor. I kind of think of it as like a diamond. So you've got your tailbone at the back and your pubic symphysis at the front. You could sort of think of it like a hammock almost. So you get your pubic symphysis at the front, your tailbone at the back, and then this sling of muscles in between them. And your pelvic floor also connects at the sides to your sitting bones, which we'll connect to in a minute. So now just feeling for connecting to that whole area, that whole diamond. You might feel a subtle movement of your breath in your pelvic floor. And this is an area that you could spend years mapping and tracking and feeling what's going on in different parts of your pelvic floor. It's an area that in general people are very disconnected from, but it's so much, it's so close to your center. It's a really amazing personal practice to become more aware of and to feel more in your pelvic floor. And for now, just work with a sense of how the pelvic floor might be moving out when you breathe in. And the pelvic floor will move in subtly as you breathe out. Noticing any physical sensations that arise and where you feel those. Like, is it more at the front or the back or one side of your pelvic floor? Giving yourself permission to feel subtle sensation as well as big sensation. It's easy to notice when there's pain, when there's like a big sensation, a big notice. Pay attention, pay attention. But there is a lot of value in the practice of learning to also feel subtle sensation. And if it's a high pain day, you might, it's like a gated thing. So if it's a high pain day, you might, you'll feel the higher pain. But you may also be able to, at the same time, tune into subtler things. Or on days when there's less pain, you may be able to tune into this subtle, lower amplitude realm of experience, which is really, really valuable, really important. And societally, we spend a lot of time sitting. That kind of tends to make our butts and pelvic floors go a bit numb. And also, as a woman, there's a whole load of complex societal stuff around whether we give ourselves permission to feel and connect to this area internally. But I think one can live a richer and more exciting life by having access to all the different parts of our bodies, all the different sensations within our bodies, the whole range of feeling. So I think there's, for me, certainly there's been a lot of personal growth from connecting to places like my hips and pelvic floor.